Hello again, nerds. I'll take a little orange. Sorry. We're doing an intro for a video. Uh, Code Orange is putting out pretty much their whole record on their channel, but they only have two actual videos on songs aside from the one that we've already done, Swallowing the Rabbit Hole. So that's what this video is. This is the reaction to those two songs and videos, and this is an intro. All right, so I don't know what order these are all getting posted, but I just got done with the Lamb of God Memento Mori reaction video. So we're going to be talking. I don't know. Code Orange is usually pretty good about structuring a song in a more interesting way, so it's not just super repetitive. So it's not just verse, chorus, bridge, out. It's they generally speaking are a little bit more diverse than that in their structuring. So we're going to go in chronological order. Let's swap this out real quick. We're going to go in chronological order. We're going to start with the one that came out last week, and then we're going to end with the one that came out yesterday. So the one that from last week is called Sulfur Surrounding. Apparently it is an animated video. Let's check this out. Again, not heard or seen anything before this viewing. Also, I guess, okay. Also, we're going to do this like I did with the Lamb of God video, going to do expectations. So the direction Code Orange has been going since they signed with Roadrunner has been super interesting to see, because they started as like this interesting mashup of hardcore and post-metal. So think Neurosis meets Agnostic Front, kind of, but it's more of an East Coast or a West Coast version of hardcore rather than the East Coast version of it. So very interesting style to begin with. And now they've started leaning into this like techno, almost industrial sound, not really instead, but as a new part of their overall beast that is their music. So that was made very clear in the Swallowing the Rabbit Hole video. This one, these two hopefully will continue the trend. My hope, though, again, now we're getting into hopes. My hope is that we get a little bit more of the post-metal Neurosis-y kind of sounding stuff. People have been... let's clarify something before we get too deep into this. The Bleeding Into the Blur song is not emo. That is not them adding an emo element. That is the post-metal stuff. That is the kind of, again, Neurosis-inspired kind of thing. Neurosis or Made Out of Babies or Battle of Mice, or, you know, that kind of the New Rot Records, effectively. Any band on the New Rot record label, that's kind of the sound that it sounds like they started emulating back in the King record. I can't remember the full title of the record. That then again progressed when they signed with Roadrunner, and now that they're putting out this new record, it's starting to get a little bit lost in the mix from the little bit we've heard. Now, that's again not to say that it's not going to be present on this record a little bit more. It's just that Bleeding Into the Blur song was not emo. Get your subgenres correct, because there's no crying in it. There's no shallow introspection, which is what you kind of expect out of an emo song or emo lyrics or emo inspired anything. It was abstract in its lyrics. It was atmospheric in its delivery. There were definitely heavy sections of that song, so very little, maybe the tone of her voice could be construed as being similar to an emo genre, but if we're going by tones to define genres, then I really check out of the whole subgenre labeling game. That being said, let's get into the actual song. My hopes are pretty high. I'm really hoping the structure is going to be super interesting, and the actual instrumentation is going to be interesting as well. So let's go with this. That's that same clip we got at the beginning of the last song. Ooh. Some 80s ballad guitar. Wow. Again, abstract lyric. That's really all right. Let's get through a cycle first before we pause this. And now we're into a chorus. There's that techno stuff, the programming stuff, I guess, is more appropriate. All right, so that's approximately, wow. That's approximately one cycle through all of the pieces of the song, and we're over halfway done. So, very interesting addition of like a ballady kind of guitar there at the beginning. That was pretty, I don't know. I more pieces to the sound always means a more complex and interesting sound. This one sounds like the thought was of what I was hoping for, of a little bit more of that post-metal kind of stuff. Let's go back here a little bit. So the video-wise is really interesting because, like, if you look, these two animated characters are not all that different. Like, yeah, his muscle animations are a little bit more rough, and then the other one, which was obviously female, has some sort of like smoothing over it. But like, it's really interesting because they're not super different, how they can make them look so different just in the movement. But let's listen to the lyric now. Or the vocal, I guess. So one thing that kind of has bugged me a little bit as their production has been ramping up is his vocal. He used to be the drummer. Now I think he's just the main vocalist, I guess. Is they put a distortion effect on his vocal. It's cheating. Disturbed. Stained did this on their first record on Dysfunction, and it was to a much lower degree, so it was a little bit harder to detect, but it's still cheating. You can tell because as he holds out those notes, as you get into the higher, that kind of register, there's still distortion, and it's not a vocal distortion because the distortion itself, the character of the distortion would change with the pitch of the tone. And this distortion, there is no real pitch to it. It's digital distortion added in post. And And that's just cheating, man. That's just cheating. Like, I really love Code Orange, aside from, as we talked about in the comment section of the previous Code Orange reaction video, their whole aesthetic of their personification on stage, the way they present themselves is a little ridiculous. It's all machismo and silliness. But, like, the actual music they make, I really, really dig it. A lot. So it's disheartening when they cheat like that. Doing something different with her vocal. I'm forgetting their names, so I apologize. I did at least at one point know at least the two vocalists' names, but doing something different with her vocal delivery, which is really impressive too. She's gone from just being a singer, she's taking a stab at doing some screams, which is she's not the greatest female screamer I've ever heard, but it's still some vocal variety. So again, expansion and growth is a beautiful thing. And then when we get into the more aggressive meat of the song, throw in the industrial techie stuff. Now we're into another verse, it sounds like, but this one's a little more involved. So again, the structure, yes, it is technically another verse, but it's not the same verse repeated. And then kind of the same pre-chorus, but it's more of a bridge, because it's... And then an acoustic bridge, full on. And then the chorus again. Solo section. This is very like power metal inspired. And then the zombie gets the chainsaw. And then breakdown. Nice. Halftime, baby. Love the halftime. Short, very all over the place. This is why I like Code Orange, because it's, even when they play with elements you're familiar with, they switch them up and make them feel super interesting and almost new. So yeah, that was the first one. The next one is this one here. Last One Left in Fear of the End is the name of the song. Oh no, that's a whole hour long. We're only doing one video. That's a whole performance, it looks like. Wow. The length of that. 4 minutes feels is technically longer than like what you would hear on the radio. But doesn't feel like it's that long. That felt, because of the way they write a song, because of the way they structure a song, it felt like it was only like 2 minutes long. But yeah, that was almost 4 minutes long. 3 minutes and 47 seconds. I would do like just a song, since I said we were doing two. And no, we'll just stick to the one. That was the other one, was the King 810. So, all right. So, new music from Code Orange. I am super excited about it. Let's go look up. I'm going to look up real quick when this record comes out. I bet they have it in their notes. New album is available now. Underneath, available now on Roadrunner Records. So yeah, go check out the new Code Orange record. Underneath, download it. Do what you got to do to get it because you're locked in your house right now. Had somebody, the thing that started the conversation in the previous video was somebody called them cringecore, and that's what I mean by the way they conduct themselves on stage. It's pretty cringy. I totally agreed. I've never seen them live. I've never been to a show put on by Code Orange. I'm trying to rectify that situation. Just it hasn't happened yet, so I'm stuck to watching them live on YouTube. And yeah, I totally see, you know, they're all machismo and look at how big and scary we can be, even though they're all pretty little folk. Like build wise, they're pretty scrawny, and especially the vocalist who's got all of that attitude. Bass player dude is an interesting thing to watch on stage as well. But yeah, very different from what I would expect based on just the music. So if you were to just listen to their music, like you get kind of one impression of the band, and then you see how they perform the music live, and it's a whole different impression of the band. So I can see why somebody would call them cringecore based on that fact alone. Anyway, that is the end of the video, guys. What did you think of the song and of the video? As far as, well, hold up. Let's we're not going to cut it off just yet. Let's go back into it because I want to do some notes on the actual audio production. I mean, we did talk about his vocals. Transition. So let's talk about the mix of the song, all right? Because they're playing with very different sounds, the mix is going to be a different beast than what we normally get from them. So that's actually a really good section to go back to. The guitar here, I'm going to just use the keyboard shortcuts. The guitar here is more atmosphere except for those punches. So it's supposed to sit really low underneath the vocal. The vocal is the focus at the beginning of the song. But they're undermining themselves in the mix with his vocal because of that freaking distortion. Her voice, his voice. Go back a little bit further. Right? Very well mixed. His voice. Lost in the mix because he's falling underneath the drums. A vocal should be on top of everything, ever so slightly, but should still be on top of everything in any sort of kind of aggressive sounding stuff. And that Code Orange is aggressive music, so this is not necessarily an aggressive section, but even more so, the vocal should sit on top more because of the nature of the instrumentation underneath it. Because then when they come in with those hits on the distorted guitar, his voice is completely gone. See, because he's still talking, and you don't hear it because of the stinking distortion that they put on his voice. But then her voice comes back in, and it's right where it needs to be. One thing I would change a little bit, and that's just because my ears are super sensitive to it, is how high they have the cymbals in the mix. I feel like those are a little bit distracting and borderline distorting themselves because of how high they are. Not the hi-hat. The hi-hat's perfect. But the cymbals are like distorting themselves. That crash right there is borderline distorted, but the ride rather splash. That's the word I was looking for. Because the crash is what they hit with the punches with the distorted guitar, and what he's hitting there is just a splash. The splash is not quite distorted, but it's really edging towards self distortion. So I honestly would bring the general mix of those cymbals down. The hi-hats are fine, but the cymbals should probably come down in the mix. Again, if I was the one mixing it. But otherwise, I think the drums are spot on. I think the guitar is spot on. I feel like the bass could probably be brought up a little bit, because that was relatively bass heavy, that section too, wasn't it? But you're... Yeah, so the bass... something different could have been done there. I don't know if I can really put my finger on exactly what I would have done differently. Maybe add a little bit of overdrive to it so you get some of those overtones a little better. Maybe just kicked up the EQ towards the bottom end, middle bottom end on the bass. Something to give it a little bit more presence, because I feel like it's there, but the presence could have been tweaked a little bit. Otherwise, you do hear it. It is present in the mix, so I'm really just nitpicking when it comes to the bass. But that little run that he just did on the bass right there, we'll go back. Little run. Right there. Ba-doo-doom, ba-doo. Kind of gets lost underneath the drums. So like I say, if you can just increase the presence a little bit by even honestly a very small amount of overdrive would do the trick just fine. Ba-doo doo ba-doo. You heard it? Did you hear it that time? We'll go back one more time. Ba-doo doo ba-doo. Yeah, that kind of stuff would come through better in the mix if there was some sort of more presence. So yeah, there's the mix notes. I knew I wanted to do a little bit more with this. All right, guys. Yeah, so now we're gonna end off the video. I again am super big fan of this band. Any issues I may or may not have with the way they present themselves aside, the music that they produce, and that is the most important part. I love a band for music in spite of their personas all the time. I was a huge I still really like Limp Bizkit, so say what you will about that, but I really dig Wes Borland's guitar work. Sam Rivers is a brilliant bass player. We're not talking about Limp Bizkit though, we're talking about Code Orange. I love Code Orange in a similar fashion because it's really good music. Aside from the persona of the people creating the music is fantastic. So that's where I stand. Where do you stand with Code Orange? Where do you stand with this song and video? What do you think about my mix notes? All of these things. Let's have this conversation in the comments below. There are videos right here-ish, or you can subscribe by clicking the circle in the center. Do all of those things. Visit the website, genuinenerdy.net. Support over on patreon.com/genuinenerdy. All of that stuff, just like we do in every video. Thank you guys very, very much. Before we go, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.